Alrighty, welcome back to the S&C Podcast, everyone. I'm one of your hosts, Coach Carly. We got Matty Scar Performance, joining us again. We have no guest today, which is kind of cool because Matty chucked out a little bit of detail on Instagram, asked a couple of questions, asked one question and got a whole bunch of questions and answers back about what you'd like to hear from us from the podcast. So listen on through. We've got a whole heap of value in today's podcast. And at the end, we've got a special, what would you call it, Matt? Special little promos, special little details. I don't know. What would you call it?
Discounts on the equipment that we use.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one, epic. So, Matty, I'll let you start us off. Where are we going to start? Because we had a chat beforehand and there was everything under the sun. So, close your eyes, pick one, and let's go.
Yeah, so I reached out on Instagram and asked people who they want to see on the podcast in the future, and people told me what they want to see on the podcast in the future. And now we have no guests, and we're just talking about it. So Let's start with, so we got this one twice. So scapular strength and stability, or fixing scap winging. Thoughts, recommendations, ideas?
Well, it's interesting. I was going to put an Instagram reel up about what's helped me. So in November 2021, I actually had a pretty bad bike accident. I was coming down a hill, so like cycling. Took me forever to ride up the hill, and then it took me no time at all to crash when I was coming down. But basically what happened was my brakes felt really soft and ended up flying over the handlebars and crashed at about 60 k's an hour, which I think is 30 miles or something like that for you guys in the US. Yeah, just about. So bounced off the bitumen and whacked into the guardrail that stops you from going over and falling 30, 40 meters to your death. So I hit the ground, whacked into my my shoulder, my right shoulder, and got knocked unconscious. I was out cold for about 20 minutes. Someone found me just on the side of the road breathing. Although this isn't about scapular winging, it leads into it. So just stick with me for a little bit. But I had hit my shoulder, and my head had obviously hit the barrier and took the full brunt of the force. But because I turned into a rag doll when I hit the deck, there wasn't I didn't break anything, or I was very, very lucky. But one thing that did happen is I had some incredibly bad shoulder issues after that for probably, a month and a half, maybe even 2 months, and pain within my shoulder joint, but then also within my in behind, so in my scapula too. And it was just trauma. So it wasn't like there was any breaks or tears or ruptures or anything like that. And it took me forever to go from arm down by my side to arm straight up overhead. And I remember specifically what I did and what I focused on. And a lot of it was the internal, so obviously dropping it back, regressing it as much as possible. So the external and internal rotations for your rotator cuff, as well as the parallel raises. So just doing body weight of that really, really helped increase, obviously, blood flow, and then return the stability and flexibility and mobility to my joint. And what I noticed is that the one thing that's important, and Ben talks about it a lot, is to not move through pain. And so because I was constantly in pain, I had to find ways around actually putting it in a passive position. So the knee, it was hard with the knee because it would always just slide off and on the knee. So I would pop it on a box and just let it rest on a box. But then I would also lie back down. So I would lie down and would just focus on trying to lift my hand up, get to a point that was uncomfortable, and just stop before then, and then return back down again. And I remember leaps and bounds. I've heard of a lot of people, and my business partner at the time, he actually just had a bike crash. It would have been a couple months beforehand, and he was struggling massively with, and obviously the crashes are all different, so we can't compare the pair, but he was struggling massively with some shoulder pain as well. And I remember going straight into trying to get that range of motion and that mobility back into that my shoulder again. And after probably a month and a half, maybe even a month, I started noticing some massive differences. I still had a little bit of pain and almost impingement in my shoulder, and the pain behind my shoulder, around my scapula, had pretty much disappeared, but it was just kind of stuck. Then when I started to load up a little bit more and could move past that pain and wasn't like no longer working through pain, then that's when I started like noticing a lot of the benefits. So the external rotators and the power raise, along with the hanging, so really trying to get my hands above my head, that significantly helped my shoulder health. And now it's just like there is no dramas at all. You wouldn't have even thought I had a crash apart from all the scars and gravel rash on my back, which I copped, which was probably even more excruciating, especially when they had to try and clean all the crap off. Like I don't know, I might put some photos up on my socials later on today. You guys can check it out in the coming weeks. But yeah, that's something that really, really helped me. I don't know if you've ever experienced anything. Well, hopefully you haven't experienced a bike crash like I have, but experienced any shoulder or scapular issues like me. What have you kind of dealt with or used to deal with that sort of pain or those issues?
Yeah, so I mean, I never had anything major even close to that. The worst I had with my shoulder was I got cleaned out in the game. Like a guy slid in from the right and a guy slid in from the left, and I sort of flipped. I just landed straight on my shoulder, and that ended up being more of like a contusion, like a bad contusion kind of a thing. And I mean, that's something you have to deal with just with time, but I was working with one of the guys I used to play soccer with, and he had just dislocated his shoulder a couple times in the last year or so, and had a torn labrum, and he was probably 3 or 4 months out of surgery with that, and he came in just to work out with me, and I was like, "You've done these before," and I showed him external rotations on the knee, Powell raises and trap 3 raises, and he was unbelievably weak in them. And it was a little bit shocking to me because he was getting close to being cleared to start doing things like holding heavier weights, getting a bar back on his back, doing some pressing, and it was like he couldn't do 8 reps of an external rotation with 5 pounds.
Wow.
And he was like, I've been doing these. I just been doing a ton of them with the band, and like we've been doing like ITYs with the band and external internal rotation, and it was like you were so weak, man. Like 5 pounds on external rotations, power raises, and trap 3 raises were all brutal. And I think one of the things with shoulders, and then it kind of will bleed. This concept will bleed into all the other areas, but shoulders, a lot of times people will do the band exercises. Like you can have the external rotations on your side and up and all that. And if you're just doing them with the band, you never have any mark for, am I truly getting stronger or not? So that's why I think the exercises that you and I have mentioned, there's no band work. It's you did 6 reps with 5 pounds a day. Can you do 7 with 5 pounds next week? Mm-hmm. Or you're doing it with body weight. You got to here. Can you get to here next week? Like, I think that measurable, and we talk about it so much as ATG coaches, can you measurably increase your strength in these not always popular but super essential areas? So we've gotten away, as usual, from scapular weighing, but I think if you really, really work on your Powell raises and trap 3 raises, and even in some sense, sort of like cross bench, dumbbell pullovers and external rotations, I think it'll take care of a lot of it, especially with the scap winging, with it coming off. Really, really getting strong like that, I think can play a huge role in bringing that back how it's supposed to be.
Yeah, I agree. Making it measurable is definitely the way. Like, I've worked with a couple of people that have had a shoulder surgery, and one in particular, so he tore his labrum, and then the bone had ripped off with the labrum. And so when he had surgery, he put a plate. No, he didn't. They put a plate in, and it's like straight away he lacked range because obviously the plate doesn't allow you to go further. But even for him, like it was all band work. Like everything was just band work, and it's not necessarily saying that I think bands have a time and a place, especially if it's just to give you some feedback Like, I think that's great. But like you said, and I do agree, it needs to be measurable so then you can actually see, well, this is how I did today. How do I feel after doing, like you said, 5 reps with X amount of weight? And then you can go to 6 reps with X amount of weight, and I feel like this. And you can start to measure or you can measure your progress basically, and how you're progressing through those couple of days, and then how that's making you feel. Whereas the band work, like if you just do it and you're just kind of doing this back and forth and up and down, like there's no real measure on where you're going and what you've done. So I do agree. I think that it's important that you actually get some beforehand. Before ATG, I was never really one, especially for workouts, to measure exercises. Not necessarily, not like obviously progressive weight or anything like that, but now that I understand, it's like it is very, very important to see progression in the way that you measure your, like, what you're actually doing. So you can use it as a measure. How did you feel doing this? All right, how do you feel doing this? It's like, okay, we've got some progression, or maybe we need to regress it to go back, and then we can work through and get better. So yeah, I think that covers a lot on the shoulder side of things. What's next on that list, unless you want to add to that, Matty?
Yeah, so just my 1 second addition is that I think bands do have their place. I think it's more of a complementary role to the measurable things. And you kind of mentioned it a little bit. Like if we do want to heal and we want to do, I don't know, 3 sets of 50 external rotations just to get blood going, get the movement in there, great, use the bands. But the bands can't be used forever. Like you need to have that real measurable stimulus.
Absolutely.
Eventually, you got to go from the bands to the dumbbell to a Cuban press and start adding the weight. And yeah, so let's talk about the Achilles. You got any fun Achilles stories, or any experience with that?
I've never touch wood. I got a box over there, and I'll just touch my head for now. But never torn my Achilles. Never seen anyone tear my Achilles. I mean, apart from those videos that you see on socials where a basketball player kind of steps back and then you can just see just the Achilles explode. For me, when I was younger, I did have a period after I came back from my second ACL reconstruction, I think it was, or first. It was either second or first ACL reconstruction. It was definitely my second. That's right. I went through copious amounts of ankle sprains to the point where it was just like I had to strap both ankles to stop them from going anyway. And like I hate strapping. I was never a fan of strapping at all. But I had to for trainings, I had to get it strapped. For games, I had to get it strapped. I remember I had to go through and get my shoulder strapped as well. I think I fell on it funny. And so that year I won like the Trainers Award, which was like it was something ridiculous, like a couple of kilometers of strapping. They worked it out. I don't know how they worked it out. I think it's based on rolls. But anyway, nothing to do with really Achilles strains or Achilles ruptures or tears, but a lot of like the ankle stuff. And what I found actually helped with me was I put a post up a couple of months ago about doing the dangerous things. Dangerous things carefully. So thinking about like the internal and external rotation of your ankles and actually spending time in that position. So not necessarily, and strengthening that dangerous position, but not necessarily doing anything to my Achilles tendon. How about yourself? Have you ever experienced or seen or witnessed anything like that?
No, thinking about it, I don't think I've ever seen anybody fully rupture their Achilles. I've had some minor Achilles stuff when it all kind of flows together. It was just everything in my ankles and my lower legs were just going. I think to talk about Achilles and preventing Achilles injuries and Achilles strains and everything, some people, even at this point, and we kind of take it for granted being in the sort of fitness space, some people don't know that there are 2 calf muscles. So there's your gastroc, which is the one that you see, and your soleus, which is behind it. And the interesting thing about the soleus, and I didn't know this when I was playing, is that it actually runs almost the whole length of your Achilles. So your soleus is pretty much sandwiched in behind your tibia and your Achilles, the big bone in your shin. So if we want to talk about preventing Achilles injuries, strengthening the soleus is going to have a really, really huge effect on that. Whether it's bringing blood flow, working into the muscle, and that kind of transfusing over into the Achilles tendon and strengthening it like that, or just generally having a really strong soleus can make a huge, huge difference. And I didn't know previously that seated calf raises and standing calf raises do two different things, two different muscles. So I was like, all right, I do my standing calf raises, I don't need to do seated, or I did my whatever. So for me, it's a pretty simple thing. Like, you want to improve your Achilles health, get freakishly strong soleus muscles. I was talking to one of the other ATG coaches the other day, and he was talking about he had some Achilles tendinitis, tendinopathy, whatever, and he was like, I can't get it to kind of kick rocks and get out of here. So I was like, you gotta blast like the seated calf raise, like volume really, really high. Keep it in the range that isn't painful, but blast the volume and add pauses in the bottom. And I think you mentioned me a couple days ago that it's making significant progress in a short amount of time. So it was like, sometimes we don't realize that how much work your calves can actually handle.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, they're built to walk and run and jump all day on. Like, they have an insane work capacity. So you got to both work them longer than that and harder than that. So I don't know. My one recommendation for Achilles is get ridiculously strong in the seated calf raise.
Yeah. When you think about like the complexity of like the ankle joint itself, like there are so many other things, and definitely the seated calf raise to work on that soleus is one big part of it. I think a lot has to do with, like, I've noticed a massive change with my feet at the moment since not spending any time at all in soccer boots, and actually being able to spend more time barefoot. Serious. I remember. So for me, I believe that a lot of those issues had come from obviously my feet spending a lot of time cramped up. And now that I have the ability to open up my toes and spread my feet and all that sort of stuff, I'm starting to feel and see and actually notice a little bit more development of my lower legs, like my tibs, my calves. Maybe that's because I'm using more of my toes or using more of my feet. I've got no idea. That's just an assumption. But I do agree with you in like exploring those ranges as well, because even with like the FHL calf raise, it's different to a normal calf raise, because you're actually allowing yourself to locate more tissue when you drop your heel down further and your toes are raised up higher. You're on an angle as well. It's really changing the whole dynamic. And then obviously with the seated calf raise too, you can really load up differently compared to, because you can bang out some significant more reps with the seated calf raise. I mean, I can anyway, in comparison to the FHL calf raise. Like, I can just sit there with the same amount of load and just keep going, keep pulsing through. And it's like, it actually feels good. Like, you can actually feel that there's some work going on there. So I agree 100% with what you're saying.
Yeah, here's something that I've sort of changed my opinion on in recent times, and partially in just from my own experience, and partially from a series of messages that Ben, the Knees Over Toes guy, was sending out. I now, in terms of ankle health, so now we're getting a little away from Achilles, but so be it. In terms of ankle health, I now think that soleus, Achilles, gastroc strength is the number one overall thing. And then I kind of see the foot and the toe and ankle work as helpful, necessary for people that have really bad ankles and haven't had much luck with it, helpful for everybody, and then for some people, not necessary. So the things that kind of made me think about this more were, it sounds weird, but looking at the best athletes in the world's feet.
Yeah.
Like, you look at Usain Bolt's feet, horribly messed up. LeBron James's feet, disgusting.
Yeah.
Cristiano Ronaldo, bad toes. So it's like, these are some of the most athletic people in the world, and they've gotten to that level without, to my knowledge, a significant amount of ankle injuries with horribly messed up feet. But you look at their legs and especially their lower legs, ridiculously jacked.
Yeah.
So there's also the component of all three of those being cream of the crop genetic freaks. But I think, and I made a post about this the other day, that if you spend all of your time, I think this is how I ended it, if you spend all of your time trying to get your big toe to go back and forth to the detriment of increasing strength in your tibs, soleus, and calves, tibs, soleus, and gastroc, you're stepping over dollars to pick up nickels, meaning you're spending your time on some of the more low value. You're missing out on the really, really high value stuff. Not that strengthening your toes and getting your feet working and making sure you have sufficient arch strength isn't really important, especially if you have messed up ankles. But the biggest period of improvement I ever saw in my ankles was when I started blasting both kinds of calves and tibialis braces.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's
totally.
how my views changed a little bit.
Yeah, totally. I saw that post that Ben put up, and it definitely makes sense. I mean, speaking on behalf of like the cream of the crop, like the athletic genetic freaks, that's not an issue for them because they've been able to create that dominant strength within their lower legs. For probably the general population, I think that this is probably when we're moving more into toe and foot health rather than ankle. So it's like we're just slowly moving away. But like if we were to focus more on toe and foot health, then obviously you would want to spend more time. And this is where it can get really, I guess misinterpreted is the best word to use, because there's like a flow-on effect. Like we've started with the Achilles, then we've moved on to the ankle, and now we can go on to the feet and the toes. And it's like, well, obviously if you want the feet and the toes to become healthier, you need to do work on the feet and the toes, and you can't completely neglect the ankle. And I think you just recently put a post up about it on Instagram. It was about I think it was like knowing when to change, or like working on one thing for 4 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever it is, and then seeing how you feel. And obviously this is when the ATG principles come in, where you're able to measure what you've done over time. When you started, you did this. When you finished, you've done that. So there's obvious improvements, and then you can go based upon pain and that too. So that's another reason why I think measuring what you're doing is really, really important, and that's what ATG principles are really good for.
Yeah, the idea for that video came because somebody left me a comment saying, and they didn't say it this nicely, but like you give out so many things. How do I fit all of these into my program? And the point was, you can't and you shouldn't. Like, if you're LeBron James and you're flying off of 1 foot, 2 feet, whatever, minimal ankle injuries, whatever, don't spend all your time, and maybe you have like a patella like jumper's knee, whatever. Don't spend however much time it takes to fix your toes. Like, you need to fix your jumper's knee. That needs to take the majority of your time, and then you can fill in the other big buckets. Don't worry about your toes right now. In the future, if you start getting ankle sprains or you have turf toe or whatever, then you spend more time on your toes and less time on your knees, and maybe less in the other buckets. So, I mean, the point is, for some people, some things are super necessary. Other people, they're not necessary at all. So I guess that's the point of it, is that for some people, maybe your calves are ridiculously strong and you still got some ankle issues, probably going to come from your foot. If you have so I lost track of what got me on that topic. But.
You were pretty much talking about like trying to fit everything in and focusing. So like focus on what's important to you right now. Like if your toes are jammed up, but they're not giving you any issues, but you have this knee pain, or you have this ankle, or maybe this calf or hip pain, like focus on that first, because there's a significant amount of attention needed there. So
you can't do everything, and I made that mistake for a long time. You try to do everything, you're going to overtrain, and you're going to do things that have a negative effect. You're gonna be a detriment to you rather than a positive like training should be. So you have to understand, like you said, the measuring part. That's where it's really cool to have the structural balance numbers that Ben and Ben are starting to put together. You can see, oh, my seated good morning is really, really weak. I need to spend more time on that, maybe less time on low cable reverse squats, maybe less time on ATG split squats. Maybe I need to reverse the order of those. So there's a lot of things. And one of the things that was actually put into the who do we want to be on the podcast was flat feet. So we've worked our way there and worked what seems to be around that topic. So what do you got to say about flat feet?
So when I was younger, my parents chucked me in orthotics. They were the real stiff and hard ones. I reckon they spent thousands and thousands of dollars as my foot grew to, accommodate my flat feet. This is in my time as I've progressed, not only through sport, but then through life. I don't wear orthotics at all anymore. I remember the 1 year that I did. Not only did those orthotics last me, what was it, a month? And I think I spent $900 on them, or maybe it was 2 months. And this is me. I'm not bashing orthotics. For me, they were not seen as a something that could fix what was going on. But really, now I think about it, there wasn't anything wrong with me in the first place. And had I focused on doing things correctly and understanding like the mechanics of my feet, my toes, the way that my arches have now formed, like I actually have arches in my feet. Beforehand, they were flat. Like I'm talking bricks, man, just flat as. And that's what I felt like when I was walking around. Having done a little bit more of my own experience and my own research on myself and noticed that so toe health, in particular big toe, and the ability to move that big toe up and down, but then also finding that big toe joint, which I can find quite easily because I've got bunions the size of, kettlebells sitting on my toes. But like the ability for me to be able to locate and find the floor with that big toe joint, it almost like just creates that arch for me. And I can genuinely feel a massive difference now when I run, feet don't get as sore. And even knees, as an example, I can't run forever on the bitumen, but I've been doing a whole heap of these stupid CrossFit workouts lately with like the 10 kilo weight vest on and just running, and I feel great. And it's like, well, the only thing that I've really been doing is spending a lot of time on my feet, and a lot of other times, like because I haven't been warped up in shoes, working out barefoot as well has been really, really nice too. So that's allowed me to gain that strength. But going back to flat feet, me having flat feet since I was a kid. And I think that had I had the opportunity to walk around more barefoot, maybe I would have developed the potential to actually, develop strength. Maybe, I don't really know. But what I do know now is that me walking around more barefoot and actually working out barefoot, spending more time in barefoot shoes and that sort of stuff. Not that this is like you have to go and do this, but that's something that's definitely worked for me. And noticing the change in my feet as well, like I said, from not spending so much time in shoes that are warping my feet up, has definitely changed the way that my arches look and feel at the same time too. My feet are still dead ugly, but it's going to take a while and maybe a couple of hundred pedicures. I don't know if there's a beauty therapist listening here, but we're looking for a sponsor, so I can definitely do with some nicer looking feet. But how about yourself?
Yeah, you could call those footballer toes.
Yeah.
I lost another toenail like a month ago or something. I'm sure mine are just as bad as yours.
Oh, I've got one hanging on. There's one that's hanging on by a thread right now.
mine are all either coming back or strongly there, just horrendously ugly at the moment. But so you mentioned orthotics at the beginning. So we'll talk about that real quick. You weren't one to bash on them. I am one to bash on them. So I think they are dumb. Especially in my experience, the number of people that have given me orthotics, braces that are mixed with orthotics to hold my foot into pronation, supination, but it's ridiculous. Like it's tons and tons of money, and it only made things worse. Like if you would have just told me like train the absolute mess out of your calves and get your big toe working and do a whole bunch of arch builders, it would have just gotten rid of all of my issues. But I didn't hear any of those things one time from podiatrists, physical therapists, doctors, the people selling me orthotics. Nobody said anything along those lines. I got a lot of like grafting done on the bottom of my feet that was horribly painful. Nothing. So the thing with flat feet is that I really don't care how your feet look. And that not in terms of you and I having really ugly feet, but I don't care how flat or high your arch actually is. In general, higher arch is better than lower arch, but there's a spectrum. Like I've seen people with really, really high arches that have horrible ankle issues because their arch is too high and the bottom of their foot is too tight. But what I care about is how well does it function. So generally, having somewhere in the middle, having a decent arch would lean towards your arch functions properly. Having it ridiculously flat or ridiculously high would kind of lean towards there's probably something wrong there. So it's flat feet is kind of a not an issue, but it can be it can kind of give you the idea that like, all right, maybe there's something wrong here. Just look at somebody who's got feet that look like my hand right now. So I think strength is more important. So if you want to fix flat feet, again, it's get your toes working. Make sure you can move them side to side and up and down, and you can move them individually. Doing things barefoot is awesome. Doing arch builders where you have ball your big toe, ball your little toe, and your heel on the ground, and you try and squeeze it. Some people call it short foot, whatever you want to call it. I don't really care. Doing things like the spring ankle isometrics with your heel off the box, holding your weight or holding extra weight with it. Super cool, super effective for strengthening the feet. And then you can even start doing split squats like that and drop lunges and whatever to really, really put a lot of load on that bottom of the foot. And then blow up your calves and your tips. Mm-hmm. Just absolutely, absolutely destroy them. Like that was part of my issue, was a non-functioning arch in my ankle that was really, really bad. And I mean, I have never had as sore calves as I did in the period of a couple weeks that I made the most progress in terms of pain. So, I mean, I guess there's sort of a recipe.
Yeah.
I think I've said it before. Mobility. Make sure you have correct mobility in your toes and your feet and your ankle. Have strength. Strengthen the muscles at the bottom of your foot. Strengthen your calves and your tibialis. And then ability, just working to be able to put it all together.
Yeah. I think as well, like you said, so function is important, but then also pain is a good indicator as well. Like if you're feeling pain, you putting something underneath that just to help it prop up, it's not solving anything. It's kind of like prolonging that pain or the issue, I guess, to kind of hang around.
Yeah, and a lot of times it doesn't actually hold your arch up. It just pushes your foot off to the side, and then you end up off the side even worse.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, maybe for some people, as in like people who their feet don't function correctly, I'm talking about like maybe there's a disability or something like that. Maybe they need the things like, I think they're called AFOs or the orthotics to kind of like just guide your feet into a position. But I think for athletes, and I've had people come to me and they're like, oh, I've got really, really flat feet and like everything is just really sore. My back is really sore and my knees and all this kind of stuff. And they go and get orthotics and then they expect the orthotics to kind of fix what's going on. But had you spent the amount of money that you spent on the orthotics into the amount of time working with someone that could really guide you and help you strengthen your body so then you wouldn't have to continually purchase new orthotics every 6 months to a year, depending on how your feet change, then potentially you would seek better athletic potential, better benefits, better results, better performance, instead of being kind of stuck and wanting. But this is where it's hard, because it's like they want that straight away. Everyone wants that, and they want it done now. Can we have it right now? Whereas if you put the time and effort and work and energy into doing it, you will have greater rewards. You won't see them straight away further on down the track, but you will have greater rewards in the future. So yeah, for those experiencing flat feet, I mean, I've had flat feet my whole life, and I also think that now this is me going off on another bit of a tangent, but flat feet, you're supposed to, like, your feet are, you're supposed to pronate and supinate, like, so they are supposed to come in slightly, and that's from what I've researched and looked at, and I'm going off a bit of memory here, but your feet to load up to get more potential and more power for jumping, for example, you can actually roll on in, not necessarily come significantly into your knees, kind of like coming together into valgus, but allowing that internal rotation and springing back out again. So like that, and to do that, you need to go into that position to be able to get or develop more power and jump height. I don't know whether you've researched that at all.
Yeah, there's a little, so it's a similar thing with sprinting too. So yeah, so a lot of people do, when you're doing like a standing jump, or even sometimes in a running, maybe like a 1 foot jump, you actually get that. It looks to a lot of people like knee valgus, but it's like internal rotation of the hips.
Yeah.
And to lengthen the glutes, and then with that internal rotation pairs pronation, partially because when you move that calf forward to get that would be dorsiflexion. To get the dorsiflexion, you kind of have to pronate a little bit, because your calves will, in the way, so your posterior tibialis, the opposite of your anterior tibialis, the one we talk about a lot, kind of functions the same way with the calves as plantar flexors and not supinators, whatever. It goes down and pulls inwards. So you kind of got to come down and whatever to pull up. It's the same thing when you're I might have gotten that backwards. But when you're sprinting, when your foot is about to hit the ground, you hit on your the ball of your fourth or fifth toe, and then you kind of roll inwards, and then you take off of your big toe. So you hit supinated, and you roll in, and you take off pronated. So if you don't have that ability, it kind of loads up the joint, and then you can spring out. So lacking the ability to pronate and supinate in an athletic way is going to be a detriment to your athleticism. But if you can't control your ability to pronate or supinate, you're going to end up with torn tendons and torn ligaments.
Me.
and me in the past. So yeah, welcome to the club.
Yeah, exactly. What's next there, Matty?
So we could talk about, let's see. So I'll put these kind of in the same boat. People were asking about calisthenics for beginners and plyometric kind of ramping up load after an injury. So what are your thoughts on plyometrics? Talk more about plyometrics.
Yeah.
Calisthenics is just like another type of weight training.
Yeah. So plyometrics for me, this has become more apparent and in terms of training. So like when I was doing a lot of the youth stuff with the teams, we did probably 5 to 10% of that stuff, less than that actually, would be the plyometrics. And it was more about teaching your body how to deal with unknowing situations. So for example, when I would go out and would train the kids just before they started training, it was more of like understanding that, like preparing your body for the unknown. So we did a drill where we would kind of jump up and you would either push, pull, or shuffle them side to side. And I had to try and land and stick the landing. Now, obviously, they didn't know what the person behind was going to do, whether he would push them, pull them, or push them side to side. And so it just gave them a good bit of feedback so they could understand what could potentially happen and could almost prepare them for loading up in that way if it happened throughout the game. Not that that's necessarily plyometrics, because plyometrics, from my point of view, is more of like how can I increase distance in terms of jumping forward or up. I haven't spent much time training that specifically with people because they're already doing it in their sport. We've spoken about this before. So like for me, I don't feel it's the right thing to do to give more jumping and more explosiveness and more load in that particular way of training if they're already doing a significant amount of it throughout their sport. Now, pre-season is coming up pretty soon. And so I've already had a couple of people reach out to me, and that is something that we'll be working on because you can actively measure that. Like, again, it's measurable, but then we can spend more time on it as well away from the soccer field, which will then give them more potential to be able to grow in terms of height with their jump and length with their jump as well, if we're using those as measuring tools. How about yourself?
Yeah, I think if you were to look at my social media profiles, you would see this guy doesn't do any plyometrics at all ever. It would seem that way, and I don't. And it's not like I on the side do 80% plyometrics and like 20% strength work, but I think there's a. So when I was training to become more athletic and was doing all that, most of the programs I came across were heavily plyometric based, and I would get more athletic really quickly in 2 weeks, and then I would be a total wreck for the next month or two or whatever, just because I wasn't ready to handle it and it wasn't fixing my problems. So I think plyometrics are an extremely effective thing once you build up a sufficient base. Like, Ben does a lot of jumping and a lot of sprinting because he's built up, his term is bulletproofing reserve. He's balanced, he's strong in all the areas, doesn't have any pain. So he can do that, and that'll supercharge his athleticism. But if you're already messed up, you got to fix those areas first. And that's what I kind of try to help people with online, is that fix these areas, and then athleticism will come, and you can do the plyometric stuff that you can see out there on that. So it's undoubtedly really effective, and there's times and places in rehab coming off of injuries that I think you can use them. Do I think that's a great idea? Maybe. You could almost call a forward sled push a plyometric exercise, really low level plyometric exercise. Maybe. So it's an interesting thing in my mind. Sometimes I'll go back and forth like on how super, super important, not really that important, kind of important. I usually end up somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
And
I guess you can like to specificity, like for your average weekend warrior, again, it's like stepping over dollars to pick up pennies, like, so what is most important for you right now? If you want to increase your vertical jump, for example, for your sport, or you want to increase that to get your dunk, or to jump like Cristiano Ronaldo, headering a ball, jumping higher than the goalkeeper in his hand, like, then there's definitely area for that. But that is not just accompanied with plyometric, it's accompanied with strength as well. So I think, like you said, creating that foundation, that base first, is significantly more important than anything else.
Yeah, sometimes it can depend on the sport. Like if you're a high jumper, you have to jump a lot, and you're gonna want to get really strong first, but then you're gonna have to jump a lot. If you're a soccer player, get strong and then do some sprints every now and then, and you can do some jumps too. But it's like, how much time are you going to spend to make sure that you're strong enough, and then do all your plyometric exercises, and then are you going to find enough time to do all the technical training that's so important? I would rather leave 0.5% on the table from doing less plyometric exercises to keep you on the field and let you do as many technical sessions and small-sided games and full team practices as you possibly could. That's just my value. hierarchy.
Yeah. I do. I agree with that. I think that you're just getting so much of it already. Why do more, and why put your body through more when like there's more bang for your buck, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah.
What about
Yeah.
calisthenics for you?
I mean, if we want to talk about measurable, I mean, it's really cool. It's really sick when we see people do muscle ups and like front levers, skin the cat, back levers, the flagpole things. It's really really cool, and those people are freakishly strong. But if we're talking about athletes, we're talking about regular people that have problems with their knees. I mean, you can call it measurable with dips and chins and adding load to those, but I think you're missing out on a lot of things. Like I don't know a great way to train your external rotators on a pull-up bar. I don't know that there is one of those. I think if you want to be a calisthenics athlete, spend a lot of time with the chin-up bar, but you're going to have an exponential increase if you do spend time in the weight room as well, even if it's just working on those little things. Like I don't really know what calisthenics athletes do for their legs besides like air squats and jumping, but like I'm sure if you squat a little bit, you're gonna jump higher. Do your polygon step ups, you're gonna jump higher. You do your external rotators and your power raises, you're gonna have healthier shoulders to do some ridiculous muscle ups. So it's a sport, not a training method for me.
Yeah, I when I was younger, my sister used to do like it was called calisthenics, and that was like when they had the batons and all that sort of stuff. So that's what was floating through my mind. But now, like when I was younger, but now I know it as like everything that you just said there, and actively putting it into things like bar muscle ups, ring muscle ups, skin the cat, all that sort of stuff. But I've recently had love found with like handstand work, for example, which I would kind of classify that as calisthenics work. And if we to go further on handstands at the moment, one thing that I know a lot of people think straight away, because I was there, was like, oh, I want to get upside down. I just want to go and be able to do a freestanding handstand in 2 weeks. It's like, it's not going to happen, man. It does not and will not happen in 2 weeks. I mean, you can prove me wrong, but the amount of time that you have to spend on your feet to be able to walk is, how long would it take for a baby to walk? You know, probably years, maybe just less than a year, 6 months, 6 to 9 months of practicing being on your feet, and then you start getting better at walking. Like there's a lot of time that you have to spend on your hands. And then going to that, there's a lot of time neglected as well. Like people just want to go upside down straight away, and then they start freaking out like, oh, nah, it's no good for my shoulder, it's no good for my back, it's no good for my wrists or for my fingers. It's like, well, no duh. Like you need to spend a lot of time strengthening these fingers and these wrists. These fingers need to be like sausage fingers, and these wrists just need to be like made of steel for you to be able to hold your own body weight to start off with. So doing a whole heap of exercises like finger push-ups, where you got like, you're literally just pressing, for those who are listening, you might not be able to see it, but you're practically pressing your fingers into the floor and using your body weight to then press yourself up. Wrist rocks, forwards, backwards, side to side. Ido Portal, I remember seeing a video of him like doing the push-ups, and then he was like jumping on his wrists as well. Not that you have to get to that level, but it's about getting strong in these positions. So actually being able to be strong with your knuckles on the floor and building that strength in your wrists. Like that is the first place that you should start when you're doing any handstand work at all, in my opinion. And I was guilty of it. Like I wanted to go upside down straight away, just wanted to get upside down. And I was lucky I did have the strength at the time in my wrists and shoulders, so I didn't really experience that pain. But what I did experience was lack of performance. So it took me forever to get to that next step of handstand, because I just couldn't spend enough time upside down to develop the strength in my wrists and hands and fingers to be able to stay upside down for longer, because I didn't work on the strength. So for those, and I'm in no way, shape or form a handstand expert, but I do spend a little bit of time upside down. And I think if you want to spend more time upside down, you can't neglect your fingers, your wrists, your hands, even your forearms, and you know, there's a whole bunch of other things too. But I think your fingers and your hands and your wrists are the most important when thinking of handstands.
Yeah, that sort of comes back to the idea of you can't do it all. So you would have a hard time if you wanted to get really good at handstands, but also become athletic as you possibly can and as strong as you possibly can. Like the amount of time that you have to spend doing your wrist curls and your rotations and your pushes and your finger work and your gripping and your extensive, it's a lot of to do. Becoming really good at any one thing takes a lot of work. And there's the saying, you can't. I think Pollock said it. You can't sit one ass on two horses.
That's great.
So you got to pick something. Like you can't do two things really well at once. So handstands are really cool. I haven't pursued them because I have other things that I want to spend more time on. It would be really cool to do handstands and do a ton of juggling and do a ton of plyometric work and a ton of jack my squat up and film a whole bunch of videos and do all that, but that's too many horses for one ass.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so it's everything always comes back to you have to pick your battles. Yeah. And it's the same thing if you have injuries. Like if you got your knee problem, spend the majority of your time on your knee and maybe not doing handstands. But so here's maybe we can this kind of flows into that. So when we talk about programming towards goals, what are your kind of thoughts on how to program things? When do you use rest days, down periods? When do you elevate the intensity? And it's going to be hard to get really specific on this, but any general thoughts on that?
Yeah. I'll speak on behalf of myself because like the clients I have, it's different. It's different for each person. So I can't just say like, do this because it doesn't totally reflect with other clients. But if I'm to think for myself, I go, and this might click a few people's button or press a few people's buttons, and I hope it does. But I used to be massively into like your Garmin watches and wanting to get the Whoop strap and all that sort of stuff. And you know, you have a look at your Garmin and it says, oh, you got to rest for 48 hours, or you have a look at your Whoop strap on your phone and it says your readiness, or I actually don't really know what the actual metrics are on it in terms of what they're called, but I see a lot of the times like, oh, you haven't slept well today, or you haven't done this today. And so
yeah, you're at like 30%.
Yeah, exactly.
I had one for like 18 months.
I've never had a Whoop strap, so I've only seen what's happened on there. And I've had a Garmin, which I've since it's been sitting in my gym flat because I'm probably going to sell it and just get rid of it. But I always would like just look at my watch all the time and saying, oh, it's telling me to rest today. What? Like, why is it telling me to rest for? Like, I feel great. And then some other days it would be like, oh, you're good to go. You know, like you're fine. You can just do what you usually do, go and max out your squat or whatever. And it's like, man, I feel like crap. I don't want to. I don't want to do that today. So I think we're in a society now where like, and we spoke about measuring, but I think that your Whoops, your Garmins and all that sort of stuff, although they're great to give you a kind of a basic understanding of your readiness for exercise, or the heart rate variability and all these awesome pieces of data which can be used, I don't think, my opinion, I don't think it's necessary to have a piece of artificial intelligence to tell you when you're good to go or not. Like, do you feel good? Yeah, I feel awesome, but my watch is telling me that I can't work out. If you feel awesome, go and work out. If you feel like crap, have a rest day, do something that's a little less on the intensity side. For me, the last, I reckon 5 or 6 days, when was it? No, it's been a week now. Like I said, I've been doing those crazy CrossFit workouts with like the weight vest and the hundreds of reps and the running and all that sort of stuff. I'll do a day of that, of just the session for 40, 45 minutes, maybe an hour if I've got the time. And then the next day I'm obviously feeling gassed. My legs are gassed. Well, here's an idea. I'll just do a dense strength workout with like on the ATG app, because intensity is significantly less. I can take my time working through it. It's measurable. How do I feel going through these? So I'm not necessarily not doing anything, but I'm still doing something, but it's just not at that intensity. That's probably the big thing, is intensity. What is the intensity that you're doing your workout at? Are you still doing something? Are you doing maybe accessory work? Is it complementing where you want to go? So I don't think you have to have maybe a mental rest day. Yeah, sure. You can throw in one day there as a rest day, just to kind of take yourself away for a little bit and then come back feeling better. But if you feel good and you still want to do something, but you don't want to kill yourself, well, just do it through accessory work. And that's me. That's again, it's my own personal opinion. And again, people can have their Garmins and their Whoops and all that sort of stuff if they need it. But for me, it's like, well, how do you feel today? How long did it take you? There's a measure, like a way you can measure yourself. Do you feel better now than you did last time you did it? Maybe if you do it again, or do you feel better as a human being? How do you actually feel? Like, I think that is more important than measuring your heart rate variability or measuring your readiness for exercise or your whatever else there is that Whoop does. That, again, my opinion. I don't know how you feel about that.
So I had a Whoop for 18 months maybe. And I wore it all the time. I never took it off. I had all the data. I never figured out if I liked it or not. And eventually I got rid of it because the main thing, it can be helpful for people to understand who aren't so in tune with their body, to understand what feeling good and feeling bad feels like. But then you run into the problem of, do you let your score in the morning dictate how you feel? And that's why I got rid of it, because I didn't want to wake up to a 60% readiness score and then I'd be like, oh yeah, I do feel like garbage today. Or wake up to a 97% and I'd be like, yeah, I do feel awesome today. Yeah, thanks, Whoop. You're right. I never figured out if that really affected me or not, whether that swayed how I felt or if that is really how I was and I just didn't know until I saw it. Like, there were days that I thought I slept pretty well and I thought I was fairly well rested, and I would wake up on a game day and be like 65%, and I'd be like, that's kind of dumb. I don't really believe that. I thought I rested well, and I would go play like garbage in the game. Keep in mind, my ankles were shot at that point still, but just to save face a little bit, I'm going to blame it on the ankles. But then it was like, maybe Whoop was right, or maybe I let Whoop affect me, and just seeing that caused the detriment. So it's I don't like it for that reason, because I don't want to have it affect me. And I say that as I have an 8 sleep, the bed cover that tells me my readiness and my heart rate variability from the night before. But I just don't really look at it. Like, I only use it for like the temperature stuff. I don't care what my heart rate variability is anymore. If I see it's really high, I'm like, cool, that's pretty high, that's awesome. And then it's like, whatever. Like, I haven't figured out what's more important yet with that. Is it learning how good your body feels? And that depends on how accurate the device is. So I'm not sold either way on it yet. And if I had to give out one piece of advice for programming and rest days, if you're a guy, do less. If you're a girl, do more. That's that's not the most maybe correct thing to say, but guys tend to do too much and girls tend to not do enough. So if you're a girl, push a little bit harder. If you're a guy, you should relax. And you and I both have experience on this side that usually guys need to relax until you really understand what's going on.
Yeah.
You want to do everything, and you want to do everything really heavy.
Well, that's a really, really good point, is that guys usually don't think with their brains, they think with something else. And so it's all about, it is though. And that's in our our genetics, if you want to say that, like, where guys will just want to prove that they are the dominant one. Whereas, and noticing from the work that I would do at the gym, the guys that worked at the gym, we did a lot of like testing and erg work and that sort of stuff. And you do maybe 4 or 5 rounds. And on the first round, the guys would be cactus, and you look over at the girls, and the girls like know that there's 4 more rounds to go, or the guys are like, nah, it's just this one and that's it. It's just, but you knew that there was more rounds to go, you know? So the guys always think with their nuts, and the girls actually think with their head and their brain. So I can attest to that, and I can agree with that. It takes practice too, to like pace yourself as an example, because you are technically pacing yourself over a week. You know, what are you doing today, and what are you doing tomorrow, or over your life? You want to get into being all like sophisticated with that. So yeah, I agree with that. Guys should taper it down just a touch, and girls should, you know, just give it a little bit more, you know, just on the old motorbike.
Yeah, if you want to bring it back to, you can't do everything in a week. You don't have to. You can think in longer than you mentioned a little bit, like pacing yourself over longer term. You don't have to think in, I have to get everything done in this 4 weeks. Like, so what if you don't train hip flexors for 4 weeks out of the next 16 weeks? Like, you don't have to do it. Like, this one block. Like, relax a little bit. I used to write myself these, like, 2.5 hour long workouts. I was like, well, I gotta do my calves, and I gotta do my quads, I gotta do quads this way, I gotta do my hamstrings, my back, It was like, dude, just relax. You don't have to do all of these. Like, split that into 3 workouts and do that over 12 weeks. Like, I still have trouble with the pacing myself. Especially if we're competing on anything, it's just, I want to go as hard as I can, as fast as I can. That part of me is never left.
I've recently, like, I was exactly like you said. You would try and fit everything in, and you almost look at the workout on the board and you go, I'm like, that's overwhelming just looking at that. I don't even want to do that. And you start doing it, you don't even get through the whole thing, and you don't get the quality out of it either. So you want to be able to do things with quality. Ben talks about it a lot with like the quality of reps. So each rep needs to be like a perfect rep. And if you're getting to 45 minutes to 60 minutes into your session and you notice that shit's hitting the fan and you're just not getting the quality out anymore, just can it. Like, stop there, because everything you do from then on in is not going to be positively working you towards where you want to go. It's just not. So be happy with the session that you've done. Start again the next day, and maybe start off where you finished. There's no reason why you can't do that. You know? Yeah,
I distinctly remember when I was probably 14 or 15 years old, Googling, how do I train for longer with more intensity?
Did you find an answer?
No. And I was pissed. I was like, why won't anybody tell me how to not have my on-field workouts turn to garbage, not have that happen after an hour?
Yeah.
And there was just nothing. I was like, this is ridiculous. Why is it? And the answer was, that's not possible. And I was like, well, I'll figure it out. I'll just keep doing these 2-hour workouts on the field in the morning, and then I'll go to the gym, and then I'll come back in the night. And it's like,
yeah,
that was stupid.
15-year-old
like anything I did after 45 minutes was horribly, horribly sloppy. It was like, here's an idea. Just cut it there. And do everything for the first 45 minutes sharper. And I was listening to, I don't know if you know Dr. Mike Israetel, the Renaissance periodization. He was on, I don't remember what he was on, but he was talking about something, and it was along the lines of, so when you're looking at your program and you're getting towards the end of a workout and you're thinking like, all right, I'll just push through this, get through this, whatever. You kind of have to ask 2 questions, like, is this exercise important? It's like, yeah, it's important. It's going to help me through it. It's like, all right, is it important that you do it with good form?
Yeah.
And any exercise that's important to do is important to do with good form. And if it's not important, don't do it. Just get rid of it. But I probably butchered what he said a little bit here. But the general idea is, if it's worth being in the program, it's worth doing well. So if you can't fit everything in with proper technique, proper intent, proper whatever, do it a different day.
Yeah.
That's something that took me like 22 years to learn.
Yeah, I can agree with that for sure. There's no point in doing something shit because you're going to get shit results. Do it well, you get good results. You do it shit, you're going to get shit results. I mean, to me, that's clear as day now. But like you said, when you're younger, it's like, no, I just want to keep working and keep doing it, and I'll do it in the morning, and then I'll come back at night. And I mean, it's different for me. I did so. Like, I would go to when I had my first, actually all 3 reconstructions. I would go to the pool in the morning, then I would go to the gym afterwards, then I would go to work, then I would go to the soccer field. Like, in each of those things, from a rehab perspective, I think it's completely different because you're able to target and work different. Like, the pool is great for X, the gym is great for Y, and the soccer field is great for Z. Like, so you can work on those different aspects and different things. And me, when I was going through that the first time, I was 17, I was younger. I could do that. I did it before school, and it was all fine. It was a lot of work, but it's just all part of the rehabilitation process. But anyway, that's going on a bit of a tangent. You got anything else to add to that, Matty, or else we'll move on to the next little bit?
Yeah, the thing I would say now is just train less. If you're trying to become like a top athlete, you should probably just train less. It sounds weird, but there was some discussion about this and some of the ATG coaches the other day, and some other people have talked about this too. Like, the greatest people in the sport didn't always play their sport the most. Like, LeBron James was a football player until he was like 16. It's not like LeBron James played 100 hours of basketball a week from 12 to 19. And I hadn't had that idea in my head. Like, I used to spend, especially in the summer when I was out of school and I was too young to have a job, it was just training all day. Like, I would wake up way too early in the morning because I thought that was a good idea, sacrificing sleep to go to the gym. I'd go to the gym and then I'd come back, and then I'd go to the fields, and I'd come back, I'd eat and hang out, probably take a nap because I was dead tired. Go back to the field in the afternoon, do some more training, come back home, and then I would go play basketball with my friends at night. And it was like that's such an unreasonable amount of work to do. And the example of Kobe Bryant was brought up. And the interesting thing is, when he was at his most athletic earlier in his career, he spent his childhood spending most of his time playing soccer in Italy. Like, he didn't grind like he did when he was in NBA as a young kid. And you would hear about these stories of him working ridiculously hard later in his career when he was losing his bounce, when he started to have ice on his knees all the time, when he tore his Achilles. So and I'm oversimplifying a little bit, but I mean, you gotta think about the greatest athletes probably recover the most. You hear crazy things about athletes eating candy and not training at all, but it's just train less. Especially if you're a guy, do less work and do more quality work.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's see. Probably the last thing here, we can talk about how we've covered this maybe a time or two in the past, but maybe not this directly. How did we deal with injuries when we were playing? Maybe we specify this down, because to be honest, neither of us dealt with injuries very well while we were playing.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I'll go first. So, like,
maybe we talk about this from a mental sense, because we were pretty clear we were poor at doing it physically at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, it's a battle, man. It is a battle. I would honestly much rather break a break a bone, and if we're to talk about something physical quickly, break a bone and rupture my ACL than have constant hamstring, constant quad, constant calf, like constant soft tissue injuries any day of the week. Because I've seen a couple of players that have continued playing after I've finished, and while I was playing, they were injured, and when I left, they're still injured. And from a mental perspective, looking out into his world, oh man, that must be so hard. But if I'm to talk about my own personal things at the moment, or having gone through the ACL rehabilitation and all that sort of stuff, it is exhausting. Like, it is physically, mentally, and emotionally draining. I can't tell you how many times I cried when I just come out of, so like, I first ACL, cried coming out of the doctors. I was like, what the hell is going on here? Don't even know what an ACL is. Then after surgery, I remember just like sitting down we had like a little bench in the shower, just sitting down in the shower trying to do my exercises, and I'm just sitting there bawling my eyes out because you feel helpless. There's no one who knows what you're feeling right now, and you're just stuck in this what feels like a never-ending spiral of just doubt and despair and negativity, because you're stuck in a position where you don't know if what you're doing is the right thing to do. And you're just following someone else's advice, and it feels overwhelming, and it is overwhelming, and it's really, really challenging. So from that perspective, it was really, really, really tough. However, I am very thankful for the people I had surrounding me, like my family, and then a couple of my friends as well. That for me, it was mental is pretty much all of that rehabilitation process. Like, I would say 90% of it is just mental. It's literally being able to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and go and do what I said 20 minutes ago about going to the pool, going to the gym afterwards, then going to work, feeling exhausted, but still going to soccer after that, and seeing like all my soccer mates. The reason why I would want to go to soccer is because I just wanted to go and see my soccer mates, and I would just jump on the bike and would help get flexion and extension in my knee as I was going through doing my rehab stuff. Surround yourself with people that are going to help get the most out of you is the first thing, but also just trust yourself and trust the process, and everything's always going to be okay if you stick to what you know and what you feel comfortable with. If there's something that doesn't feel comfortable for you, don't do it. Like, or ask questions, or try and seek advice, or just speak with people. I mean, we're two great examples. Come and speak with us if you're uncertain or unsure about anything. Like, you've had a reconstruction, you've got glass ankles at the moment. Like, have a chat with us, because seriously, that is a bigger step forward than any physical step. Because for me, like I said, I was very thankful to have those people around me, but my mentality, even though I cried, even though I felt helpless, my mentality was rock solid in like the things that I was doing. Like, I had every intention of coming back to play. The second and third time I did my ACL, I felt even more prepared than I did the first and second time. And I came back quicker and faster and stronger. And then the third ACL was a tackle, so that was out of my hands. Like, I couldn't do anything about that. But the second ACL I did, I was back in 6 months compared to 10 and a half, 11 months the first time, because I knew everything. I'm like, I got this, man. I still cried. I still felt like crap sometimes, but it's like I had the trust and the faith and the ability to be able to get back to it. And then the final one, I was back playing in less than 6 months, and I didn't have an ACL on my knee. So it's, like I said, a majority of it is mental. If not 90-95% of it is mental. I don't know if your experience was similar or what, because yours was more niggly injuries. Hey, it wasn't like a specific one.
Yeah, that was the hardest part for me, was doing so many things and nothing working. Like, that was absolutely killer. Was just putting in a ton of work, and first of all, the ankle's never getting better, and then having constantly my hamstring goes, my adductor goes, I have the back pain, I have my knees out of nowhere starts hurting. That was, I would gladly trade having all of that for just straight up maybe breaking my leg twice and missing 2 seasons and just being good for the rest of the time. Like, that sounds horrible, but I would gladly have missed even more time than I actually missed, and just group that all together with one, knock on wood, but having had one major injury or even a couple major injuries back to back, and then just being 100% for the rest of the time. Like, there's people always say that, yeah, that was horrible, but I wouldn't trade the world for what came of it. It's like, that would be a hard decision for me. Like, I love where I am now. I love that I get to connect with you and all the other ATG guys and help people like this. But man, if I would trade a lot for not having to have spent 7 or 8 years trying to understand what is going on and why I'm always hurting and I can't play as well as I know I can. That's a really, really difficult decision. And that's why you and I do what we do now, is that it sucks so bad. Like, literally the worst thing, literally in a figurative sense, literally the worst thing ever. And then I don't want anybody else to deal with that. So it's the best way to deal with being injured is to not get injured in the first place. That sounds like the world's worst answer, but that's what we do. That's our whole thing, is we want to help you to not get injured so you don't have to go through 7 years of hell trying to figure out what's going on with your ankles and what's going on with the rest of your body. And something's going to happen. Sometimes ankle sprains are inevitable. Sometimes ACLs are inevitable. Sometimes a broken leg is inevitable. It all depends on how badly you want something. Like, I spent that whole time I was still convinced I was going to be a professional player up until maybe 2 or 3 months before the last game of my career. It was I can still do it. And there's still the idea in my mind that if I decided to, I could go to a tryout in the winter and get a spot on a professional team. Do I make that effort? Who knows? But if I didn't have that absolute firm, locked in belief for that whole time, there's no way I would have just kept coming back.
Yeah.
Or I guess it's not coming back. I just never left. Like, that's just the way it works. I mean, you kind of have to be a mentality monster at that point.
Yeah, massively. Like, people kept asking me that, like, why are you still doing this? How can you do this? How can you? And I remember I would come in crutches. I would come in, have braces, be in the worst physical shape ever, but coming in happy, smiling, laughing. And people are looking at me like, how the fuck can he be so happy with what's going on in his life right now? And it's like, you just there is no other alternative. You have no control over what's happened to you. You have every bit of control of what's going to happen to you. So make the right decisions, or make positive decisions. Easier said than done. Definitely easier said than done.
With that, when I say to be a mentality monster, that you can't be an idiot. Like,
yeah,
I know people that have torn 3 ACLs, innumerable hamstring strains, ankles, hips, whatever, and I mean, just keep coming back, like, ridiculous. Like, damn, that's mentally super, super strong for coming back. But here's the thing. You got to stop doing what you've been doing.
Something's going to change.
Yeah, like, stop just stop doing the same rehab every time. Like, it's pretty clear that your body sucks right now. Like, at least give me like the light of day to explain to you why these things keep happening. And so I guess there's probably some overlap there. Like, if you have the mentality to come back from three ACLs and whatever, like 10 hamstrings and all that, you got to be pretty hard-nosed, locked in. So maybe that's why you don't want to listen to other people, but you can save a lot of that. Having the ability to listen to the people that kind of know what's going on, plus be able to come back from whatever and locked in, then you get really, that's when things stop happening.
Yeah.
So.
For sure.
I think we've been going for about an hour now. So we promised some people.
Hour 20. I don't know whether we've pretty much covered everything there, haven't we?
I think we would. I didn't think we were going to go through that whole list, but we pretty much did. Maybe in a couple more weeks we'll send out another poll and we can have people actually ask people to shoot in more ideas for us to talk about like this.
Yeah.
We promised some people some value at the end of the podcast. What do you got for us?
We did. So the Iron Shin has been a piece of equipment that I've picked up from Sean. I've met him through Uncom, and he hooked me up with the Iron Shin, and it has been exceptional. I don't know whether you guys have seen it, but if not, you just got to go and follow it. The Iron Shin, at the Iron Shin, or at Raw Form Equipment, Raw Form Functional Equipment, I think it's called, on Instagram. Have a look at it, check it out. But also there is a sneaky little code word, UncommonCali. So it's Uncommon, UN, then Common, COMMON, and CALI. That's the code word you can use to get a special little discount when you go and purchase it on their website. So that again is UncommonCali, a little discount. What about yourself, Matty?
Yeah, so Steph's got his Iron Shin code. I have a code for the Tib Bar guy. I've been using some of his equipment. Really, really cool. And if you want to get it, you can use my sneaky little code, SCORE, SKAAR10. You get 10% off. But the thing that we have in common is we both have a Freak Athlete Essentials code for you guys. So you can choose which code to use. And we're going to take this as a gauge of which one of us you like more. So for me, 20% off using SCORE20, same SKAAR20. It doesn't really matter what Steph says, just use mine. What's yours?
I'm pretty sure mine's Carly 20, so CALI 20. We'll put it all in the show notes though anyway, so then you guys can have it all spelled out. Just put mine first, and then you can put yours down.
Yeah, mine's gonna be the first line in the show notes. Yours is gonna be like 300 and it's down.
We'll see.
All right, I think that was a really valuable episode. Besides, even without the discount codes,
yeah, absolutely,
it provided people a lot of value there. If you have any questions, comments, people you want to see on the show in the future, ideas you want to talk about in the future, shoot either of us a DM. Where can they DM you these ideas at, Steph?
They can DM me at Coach Carly with the 3 eyes on Instagram. I'm still on TikTok, man. I don't know what's going on. I'm since having a chat with Brian, I haven't gotten rid of it yet. And then a little bit on YouTube, but not that much. Mainly just Instagram. And yourself, Matty?
Yeah, shoot me those ideas over at Score Performance on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. SKAAR Performance. I'll send out a poll on a story or something too in the future, and you can put ideas there. But we'd be happy to hear any questions, comments, concerns in the DMs. What people think about the podcast. So, any closing remarks?
Well, we're on Spotify too, aren't we, Matty? So check us out. Check us out on Spotify. Be sure to jump over there. Can you do that? Like, comment, subscribe, whatever else there is. Follow. Do it all.
You can follow. I think you can like it on Spotify. I don't know. It'll come to Apple Music, and I'm not sure other platforms people use to listen to podcasts. So even more important than the other things, let me know where people listen to podcasts besides Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube. All right.
Epic.
Anything else?
That's it. Enjoy
All
it,
right,
guys.
everybody, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you guys next week.